All right. Well, it is 11 a.m. Central Time here in Houston, Texas. And I think we've got a few folks already joined, and I can see a couple more coming on. So, why don't we get started with this? So, hi, everyone. Welcome. We are here today because costs are rising and growth is getting far more difficult. Today, we're going to show you exactly where your marketing budget is potentially leaking and how to stop it. Lisa?
That's right. I mean, CEOs and CFOs often think they have a budget problem, but the real issue is inefficiency. So our goal is to help you switch from wasteful spend to ROI-driven growth.
Yeah, so for all of you that have joined before or haven't been with us before, this webinar is part of what we call our CEO Accelerator Point of View series. That was a mouthful. But essentially, this is created by CMOs who've been in the trenches. These are things that we see that we're like, well, why doesn't everybody understand this? Why don't people know this? Just things that we've been around. So, what we like to say in the syndicate at the CMO syndicate is we're not consultants, we're operators. So we've led growth from the inside, and these are some of the tips and tricks that we've seen that we feel like we should be sharing.
Exactly. And today we're sharing what's worked inside scaling global organizations. So really quick intros. I'm Lisa Bratkovich. I've led growth and scale for D2C and e-commerce brands, primarily in the CPG and subscription space. Jennifer?
Yes, I'm Jennifer Welch. I have scaled B2B companies, typically in the energy, chemicals, automotive, and even SaaS sectors. So let's get into it. We're going to keep this tight. We only have 30 minutes, and we're of course going to leave time at the end for a rapid fire Q&A. Lisa?
Perfect. Yeah. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to go through the marketing budget illusion, as we call it, where CEOs are losing, frankly, millions, the smart spending formula, which we both love, full funnel strategies for both B2B and D2C, subscription and retention metrics, and probably most importantly, aligning marketing and finance for real ROI. And then, of course, Q&A.
All right. Okay. Over to you. We've got another slide that's going to kick us off with this. And this slide basically speaks to half of your marketing budget is wasted. Let's talk about the marketing illusion. So, next slide. We found a statistic that 90% of CEOs believe they need to spend more to get results. Wow. I had no idea that was true. I would have pressed for higher budgets more often if I had known that. But the truth is, over 50% of marketing budgets are wasted. And it's a harsh word, but it's reality. And these are things that don't drive pipeline and they don't drive revenue. And that's really kind of the crux of what we want to talk about today. So, for instance, in B2B, that looks like chasing MQLs. So, for those that don't speak the language, marketing qualified leads that never end up converting. Investing in MarTech, and I know a lot of CEOs have seen this before, that no one uses, or content that collects dust. So you can take this slide down. It's we've made our point on that. Lisa, you've seen this firsthand because we talk about this a lot. On the D2C side, where do you see this play out sort of in e-commerce?
Yeah, it's exactly the same problem, but it's just in different clothing, as we say. So in D2C, it's all about inefficient media buying, most likely over relying on Meta, ignoring CAC to LTV ratios. And most brands, frankly, plateau by year 3 or 4 because they never effectively and efficiently expand their channels, develop a sophisticated full funnel strategy, or use media buy allowables by channel, which you know, are very effective. And these folks also typically don't have effective retention and subscription offers.
Yeah, yeah. So the average B2B company wastes 26% of its marketing spend. And again, we're going to use this word waste because we're trying to make a point. I'm from Texas, so we sometimes use big words to prove a point. What's the worst offender? Overproduced content, underused tools, and my arch nemesis, trade shows with no ROI. I could do an entire point of view series on trade shows without ROI. Lisa, what do you see in D2C?
Yeah, in D2C, the sinkholes really are this whole idea of chasing CAC reduction, without a holistic strategy, including what we mentioned earlier. So things like expanded channels, full funnel strategy, creative testing strategy, and really failing to understand how much you spend per new customer in each channel based on LTV, profit, and payback period goals. It's really important. So Jen, it sounds like we're both seeing the same pattern, and it's all about spending, frankly, without strategy.
That is, and this is not unique to any. So we talk about this all the time. I'm typically with B2B, typically Lisa's with D2C. We talk about this all the time, and we're talking about the same thing. And it's ineffective because there hasn't been either a short term or a long term strategy put in place, and it's spend. And a lot of times it's just throw more money at it, and of course it'll work.
That's right. That's right. I think we have another slide to bring up on smart spending strategy, but
Yeah.
it's really, again, it's really about in D2C, this idea of CAC, LTV, profit margins, payback periods. Can't say that enough. But as an example, if your margin is 70%, let's say, your LTV is $500, your payback period is 5 months, you need to calculate your CAC reflecting on those metrics. And you also should do this by channel. So looking at what is the LTV for meta customers, et cetera, et cetera. This part is not art, it's math. What you then need to do to make the math work may be art, but you've got to get this math down right.
Right. We can't stress that enough when we talk about our jobs and what we do day to day. I think I live more in a spreadsheet than on the creative side. It's math, math, math. And hopefully that makes some of the executives that are on today feel more comfortable. And this is what you should be expecting of your marketing team, by the way. There's another slide that we found an interesting stat on that we want to share. So if we can pull that slide up. And this was a good one. So this is another slide about the marketing illusion. But did you know the B2B buyer is 70% through their journey before they ever want to talk to sales? Let that sink in for a minute. Before they ever, so for all those marketers that are dealing with heads of sales, all the CEOs that are dealing with heads, the sales job is after the marketing has got it warmed up, qualified, and ready to go. And in this stat, way after, way after. That means that self-service content, peer reviews, and calculators matter. It matters. We have to do the work on the front end. And that means people don't want to be. It's like when you go to the retail store and you've got the people following you around that want to help, want to help. I'm not ready to be helped yet. So you have to think about that. You know, executives, as you're thinking about what you're putting in the market, you may be being more offensive by trying to touch when people aren't ready to be touched yet. Right, Lisa?
Yeah, that's so true, Jen, and that's a great analogy. In D2C, we talk about it more about a full funnel strategy, which takes somebody through the journey that way. But brands that build a true best practice full funnel strategy, they frankly, case studies show they can grow up to 2.5 times faster than brands that focus only on top of the funnel. So it's not just about that first sale. It's really about creating this ecosystem. And to your point, when is the right point in the journey, in what channel, with what messaging, that's really going to capture that customer and maximize lifetime value.
We talk about it all the time. It's using the right tool. So, A, don't hire a plumber when you need an electrician. Don't use a screwdriver when you need a hammer. So, it's not all created equal. And when we talk about inefficiencies, this is where it happens. This is in the minutia of it. And so, if you're just looking at your top line and your line items and you're not actually getting into the minutia of it, you're missing. We've got another slide. And this one, I think, Lisa, you had mentioned it the other day. This slide is really sort of cliche, but it's true. Retention, retention, retention. And by the way,
Right.
there's retention. So we all know that SaaS lives and dies by retention, churn, expansion, net revenue. But it's true all over B2B. This is not dissimilar for what we see in chemicals or industrial or manufacturing. Churn prediction is one of the growth levers that we shall be pulling on. At least I think you use different terminology in the D2C side.
Yeah, just to go back really quick about, this old Bain case study from many years ago, 5% increase in retention can have a 25 up to 90%, 95% in SaaS profit growth. It's become a bit cliche, as you say, but it's still directionally accurate. And there's been a lot of more recent case studies that have been published that really talk about statistics around this, such as, acquisition costs, as we all know, have increased 60+% since iOS 14.5. Returning
Ouch.
customers are 50% more likely to convert than new customers, well-known fact. And repeat customers spend 67% more on average than first-time buyers. So, I mean, when you're talking about retention, it's so critical. Retention curves are really the ultimate source of truth, and churn can make or break profitability. The other thing that most people don't fully realize is subscription is such a valuable strategy. Most people set it up, and they frankly set it up as a set it and forget it. But few companies really maximize this, and they leave so much money on the table.
I
If we
think let's just let that sit in for a second when we look at these stats. I wish we could open it up for everybody right now and see a show of hands. I will bet you, just from our experience, leadership teams have no idea the power of these statistics in terms of what is walking out the door. I think, it was always the old adage that it costs more to find a new customer than to retain the one that you have. And I think these stats are really impactful. For instance, if every CFO knew this, what would the conversation be between the CFO and the CMO, the marketing team? And by the way, for you leaders out there, for you CEOs, this is what you should be expecting. We're going to talk about that in a second, but this is what you should be expecting between your CFO and your CMO. But these stats are real, and they've proven out time after time after time. Yeah. So Lisa, I think there was the point about the CFO, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's perfect. Another thing when you're thinking about this that most people don't realize back on subscription is I often see companies have, maybe their percent of new customers that end up being subscribers, it might be 10%, 15%. You know, Sophisticated modern marketers, especially in the CPG, D2C space, you want to try to get that percentage up to over 50%, if not, closer to 65%. And why? Why would you want to do that? Because typically the LTV of a subscription customer is 3 times that of a regular customer. So again, for CFOs, think about that. Think about the retention revenue, the subscription revenue that would be coming in from that if those metrics were changed. And
Lisa, when we talk about like the math, I think you were talking about a client that you're working with just a few weeks ago. These formulas just aren't baked in to what they're thinking about on a day-to-day basis because maybe they don't have the modern marketing team. Tell a little bit about what you've seen related to the ones that are doing well by using the modeling and the ones that are kind of winging it or going on what they knew from 5 years ago, which is dramatically different.
yeah, yeah, good point, Jen. I mean, you might see a company, smaller company, but still, well-established company that is operating off of a one-page, QuickBooks P&L. Whereas, sophisticated D2C marketers are using, let's say a 15 plus tab, very complex financial forecasting model that builds in retention curves, builds in every element that marketing can use as a lever to really understand where and how profit is being either optimized or decreased. So those types of tools are so valuable. And this again stresses the importance of marketers working with the finance team, everybody getting aligned, understanding these metrics.
Yeah, I will leave a slide on that. Companies need to treat marketing like an investment. And I find this all the time. Like, of course, I would say that. I'm in marketing, right? But it's not a cost center. It is math. And if you can't follow the spend to the bottom line, I would question that. When you treat it more like an investment, accountability turns into great. These stats are crazy, but I recognize them. I find them as truthful all the time. Uh, How many times do people say, I run marketing, never talk to my finance person. Um, Lisa, how many financial models do you build on a regular basis?
Oh, it's part of daily work. I mean, you've got to have that tied into the process. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think what we find, I typically end up with, like I said, industrial type companies, manufacturing companies. And so they are not the D2Cs of the world, and they're not the retailers of the world typically. And so when you look at their sophistication in terms of marketing, they're generally a few years behind. And it just is where they are. It's not to say anything bad about them, it is where they are. But when you know what best looks like, and when you know that you can track the spend directly to the bottom line, it makes you wonder why you're not, and why the marketing team and the finance team are not connected at the hip. To me, it's such a missed opportunity when we look at marketing waste. When if I'm talking to a leadership team, if I'm talking to a CEO, the very first thing I'm going to be asking is your finance team and is your marketing team on the same page? Are they talking to each other? And sadly, it's like 90% of the time, like I don't even know who they are. Those are not the meetings we're in. Or um we're looking at just the top line, and we know that there's smart people in marketing, so we're just going to assume that it's all going to work out. But that doesn't really track. And I don't think you would ever find that in a D2C company, would you?
Well, unfortunately, yeah, you still might. So that needs to change if it's not happening. But even on, let's say you do, let's say everybody's talking. The other thing that often comes into play is there's so many different sources for data in today's day and age, right? So even if even if folks are talking, even if folks are looking at the same model, you've got to double check and make sure that the data sources that are being put into these models are the same data sources that the marketing team is operating off of, because that's another issue I've seen. I've seen finance thinking they're doing the right thing, like everybody's, trying to be aligned, but they're using, GA4 metrics, and marketing's using the Shopify metrics. The GA4 metrics went into the budget, and now marketing can't meet those budget goals. So everything has to get aligned. We have to make sure that the same reporting metrics are being used. I know it sounds crazy, but
No, didn't you have an example? Didn't we talk about this a couple of months ago where it was even something so simple as lag times in reporting? So marketing was looking at, I can't remember what report you were talking about, but it was a good month behind the numbers that finance was looking at, and they didn't even realize that's where the dysfunction was and the disparity was. So it's simple things like that that you've just got to do your due diligence and make sure everybody's on the same page, and the numbers are truly the same numbers, because that's what matters at the end of the day. When we talk about this wasteful spend, it's not necessarily people are doing the wrong things. They're not being diligent enough. And a lot of people say, I don't have the resources, I don't have the time. But yet when we go in, this is where we uncover the waste. And this is what sets the truly great companies apart from the companies that are struggling, that can't quite make it. Companies that we see often, it's not a lack of ability or even will, it's a lack of knowledge. It's just not having the right tools in your toolkit. They don't have people like Lisa to talk to you on a regular basis, and so it's like once they know it, they can start to get aligned. But that's why we're sharing these things, because we see these gaps, right?
yeah, and sometimes it's not even just wasted spend, it's wasted time. So
I think
when these
that's
things are
worse.
going on, it's like, so much time is spent trying to figure it out, people being frustrated, not understanding. Now we've got to rework this, right? So it's just inefficiencies all around that can be optimized.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I know, so I have the privilege of working with Lisa often, and I know that inefficiency on time is a non-starter for her. Like we're gonna get this thing done. But I think the point that she makes that's so important is that money is money. We don't want to waste it. But honestly, which one of us in the room has time to go redo things or go down a rabbit trail that's not going to produce? And at the end of the day, that crushes me probably, and I think for Lisa, more than lack of money resources, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
we were on a
Absolutely.
call yesterday with another group, and we were talking about resources. And I think they originally thought we were just talking about budget. And when we talk about resource, we're talking about your people, we're talking about your time, we're talking about budgets. But time kind of gets slided to the side. And actually, I think it's more frustrating than not having the budgets, not having the time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do we want
Okay.
to get
Yeah,
move
let's
towards
land this
the
plane. So we're sort of getting to the end of our time here. So in at the end of the day, the things that Lisa and I wanted to leave you with are audit your spend holistically, not just within the channels. And that's great. And a lot of marketing teams are going to be looking at the minutia of their channels, but at the C-suite, whether you're the CFO, whether you're the CEO, you have to be holistically looking within the channels, right? You have to think what in marketing we say full funnel. So understand every lever that can make a difference at the top of the funnel, in the middle of the funnel, where sales qualifies in the funnel, et cetera. And then again, the old cliche, we have to maximize retention and subscription strategies to increase the lifetime value. So, and that lifetime value is not a term that Lisa and her folks get to use solely. We should be thinking about that in B2B. How long does it take us? Our sales cycle in B2B is so long that once we land that customer, we have to understand the lifetime value of that customer. And then I think, Lisa, you talk about this a lot. Model the media by allowables per channel based on LTV, and then profile those payback periods and goals, right?
exactly.
You have to run the models. And then I think lastly, what we were just, what's kind of a big thing for us is align with finance, right?
Absolutely. Like
Anything
we
else that I
can't
missed
say
on like the big picture?
no, but on your last point, like obviously we can't say that enough. It just makes such a difference. So
Yeah.
let's jump into questions. I see a few have come in. Let me
Yeah.
take a look at, I see a question from Carol in Seattle. Thank you, Carol.
Hey, Carol.
So Carol's asking, in e-commerce, I have an organization that still wants to look at results from a ROAS perspective. How do I get them out of this? Carol, such a great question. Such a great question and so common. Um, Unfortunately, folks still are using, a lot of folks are still using ROAS just because it's easy. Even a blended ROAS is very common, and people get stuck in this because it's just easy to track. But folks have to understand that that metric is just about media efficiency. It's not about overall business health. So what I found is that they frankly, that they just don't know what they don't know, right? That's what they're used to. So you as a marketer are just going to have to help educate them. I mean, you could use an example like this, for example, and you could use it with your own metrics. But if you spend $100 to acquire a customer at, let's say, a 1.5 ROAS, but then that customer came back and bought 3 more times, in the long term, that's better for the business than a customer that came in at a 2.5 ROAS that never returns. But if you're not thinking about the long term,
Smart.
of course, the 2.5 is going to look better. So you need to help them really understand CAC to LTV ratios, the payback periods we talked about, allowable CAC by channel. I mean, this is really, and you can also tell them this is really how modern e-commerce brands are going to build true growth. It's not just about quick wins, even those are also very important, but you know, happy to help if needed, DM me if you need to, but you're really going to have to help educate them. And hopefully when you do, the light bulb goes on as it usually does, but let me know if you need help.
Oh, that's a good one, Lisa. That's really good. I see. We have another question. This is Jason from Austin. Hey, Jason. Jason is asking. Well, he's stating, I have zero. Love this. I have zero understanding of what my marketing team is actually doing related to effective spend. And if I'm being honest, I see the numbers against line items. I assume they know what they are doing and see if the increase looks reasonable. But from what you've stated, I'm worried I'm missing a lot. Advice. Okay, so you're not alone. I'm assuming that you're on a leadership team, you're in the C suite. Um, What we see regularly is most leadership teams and most CEOs specifically don't have full visibility into the marketing spend effectiveness. Kind of why, we thought this topic was important. So, because the reporting isn't really built for them. You're shown line items, and we would say what you need to actually see are levers, right? So you're going to see the line items. Cool. You assume they're smart. You assume they're putting it towards where it needs to go. The budget increase or decrease never seems reasonable. So you're like, sure. Our advice is, we say this a lot, don't CMO alone. Don't try to decode this alone. You should expect clarity on what's working, what's not, and why. You shouldn't be approving line items, right? This is not Congress, right? You should actually understand what's behind it. And so it should be a great conversation between you and your CMO and your CFO to understand, why is the spend? Where am I seeing it show up in margin? Where am I seeing it up? Is it a long-term play? Is it a short-term play? If it's helpful, we volunteer ourselves as your sounding board, just as an outside perspective, to help you ask the right questions internally, because as I'm sure you've seen before, sometimes if you ask the wrong question, you're going to get the wrong answer. So if you just ask for a budget, which is a bunch of line items, that's what you're going to get. We will be happily be your sounding board, no strings attached, as Lisa said. Just DM us. So hopefully that was helpful, Jason. I see that we are about out of time. Lisa, do you want to kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, yeah. So I think hopefully this was helpful, everyone. And if you're really serious about cutting marketing spend, which everybody should be, and adopting sophisticated best practices that true modern marketers are using, we have a thought, Jen.
Yeah, so 30-minute strategy sessions, super easy. We'll discuss what's on your mind. Typically, what we'll end up talking about is, where is the leaking coming from in your pipeline, right? Or what is your customer-led growth maturity? People often want to know, like, how are we compared to everybody else? And we've seen things and we can say, well, actually, you're really great over here, but you might want to think about beefing up over here. So we can kind of help you on where you are in your customer-led growth. And then probably the most important thing is, no one can ever, we can't, you can't, even our own business, we can't do everything. So the biggest thing is prioritization and sequencing. And so we'd be happy to jump on a strategy call with you. No strings attached. Just do a strategy session to see kind of where you should prioritize, right?
Yeah, and just so you know, like you know, we just focus on quick, meaningful insights, no fluff. We get down and dirty fast, looking to solve a problem. So, please reach out if we can help. We'd love to.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thanks for joining us today. And we hope to see you at our next step point of view accelerator series.
Thank you so much.
Bye.